there are also obstacles in terms of a lot of the consumers who are interested in buy now, pay later. The Gen Z and millennial consumers are already trying it. It's a lot harder to get older consumers who have entrenched payment habits to see the appeal in this if you're already using credit cards.
Hey gang, it's Tuesday, February 1st. Sky and listeners, welcome to the Behind the Numbers Daily, an eMarketer podcast made possible by Mountain. I'm Marcus, and today I'm joined by one of our senior analysts on the retail and e-commerce team at Sky Canavis.
Hi, Marcus.
Hello there. How are you?
Good, thanks. Great to be here.
Yes, indeed. Great to have you. Welcome to the show. Today's fact, so actually it's a myth. Today's myth is that you have to wait 24 hours before submitting a missing persons report. Not true, apparently. Countless police dramas and crime thrillers have helped spread the myth that you must wait 24 hours before you can file a missing persons report, which always seems, a little disconcerting, you ask me. Fortunately, that is only a fact in the fictional world of entertainment. According to Child Find of America, there is no time period in which someone must wait before reporting a person missing. In fact, acting within the first 48 hours is crucial to successfully locating a missing person. Fascinating. What else are we being told that's not true by the police drama people? Unbelievable. Anyway, today's real topic. What's in store for Buy Now, Pay Later? So Sky, we're talking all about Buy Now, Pay Later today, and you just recently put out a report on this very topic, a topic which, if you asked people 2 or 3 years ago what that meant, they never would have heard of Buy Now, Pay Later. I would imagine, an acronym obviously BNPL, which we'll be using throughout this episode, and it just absolutely exploded in the last couple of years. First of all, Sky, let's just start with the why. Why are people using Buy Now, Pay Later? What made it so popular?
So buy now, pay later really has emerged over the last couple of years as a kind of new digital spin on the old-fashioned layaway plan. Back in the olden days of cash purchases before credit cards, people used to buy things like major appliances on layaway, where you paid a store every month and gradually, eventually you paid off the full amount, and then you would take home your big refrigerator. Yeah, that was a long time ago. So the new spin with Buy Now, Pay Later was kind of instant gratification of getting your product now, but being able to pay for it in typically 4 installments over a 6-week period. And Buy Now, Pay Later really shifted from, layaway financing larger ticket items to really smaller purchases like apparel, beauty products, consumer electronics. And this really took off starting in 2019. So in 2018, according to our forecast, there were only 1.6 million Buy Now, Pay Later users in the US. And last year, that number exceeded 45 million. And this was really driven by Gen Z, younger consumers and millennials who didn't have traditional credit or have been really credit averse, debt averse. And Buy Now, Pay Later appeal to them because it's easy to get credit. The providers don't run the traditional hard credit checks. And it was promoted as kind of a flexible financing opportunity. And merchants, retailers really flocked to it because there was a chance to really increase conversion rates and average order values. So it's kind of a win-win on both sides, or that's how it was presented.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, looking at the reasons why, there is some research you have in the report from the Motley Fool 2020. What are the main reasons why US consumers use BNPL services? Number 1, to avoid paying credit card interest, 39%, right behind that with 38%, to make purchases that otherwise wouldn't fit in my budget. And then 25% behind that in third place, to borrow money without a credit check. You mentioned the younger people gravitating towards it a lot quicker. There's normally disparities between demographics when we look at different digital behaviors, different media behaviors in general, marketing behaviors. But our forecast suggesting this year, 44% of Gen Z people will be Buy Now, Pay Later folks. If you go all the way to the other end of the scale, baby boomers, just 12%. So a massive disparity. And it doesn't seem like there's any indication or any sign of that changing, Sky? When we forecast out, it seems like those young people stay way, way ahead. By 2025, there's still a 30-odd point gap. Why is that? Why do we think boomers will never really kind of gravitate to this trend?
I think because entrenched credit and payment habits are really a lot harder to change.
Yep.
People who use credit cards and are happy using them and use them for different reasons, like reward points, even if they're not, carrying credit card debt from month to month, they still get benefits from it. And it's become kind of their entrenched way of thinking about payments. Whereas younger consumers who've never had credit cards, because it's much harder for younger people to get credit cards nowadays, and kind of look down on credit cards because they are very concerned about debt and kind of getting in over their heads. They already may have debt from like student loans and so on. So they will gravitate more towards these new ways of paying.
Mm-hmm. How did Buy Now, Pay Later get on over the holidays?
So I think the 2021 holiday period was really primed for this Buy Now, Pay Later growth, because as we've seen, the sector has just been exploding in growth and going more mainstream among younger consumers, especially between 2019 and 2020. And so with the holidays this year, we kind of saw a combination of very heavy marketing from the Buy Now, Pay Later service providers, because the competition has just been super heated. And also some conditions that I think helped fuel the ongoing use of Buy Now, Pay Later. So we saw consumers faced a lot more uncertainty in holiday shopping this year with the supply chain disruptions and inflation. And so maybe they had to do a lot more of their shopping earlier than they planned for or had originally budgeted for. So they might have wanted to use Buy Now, Pay Later to pay for more purchases, say in October and November, where they would have normally done that spending in December. Mm-hmm. And from what we've seen from initial figures so far, we've seen that this has paid off for Buy Now, Pay Later. Adobe noted that Buy Now, Pay Later sales were up 27% over 2021. However, the number of orders increased just 10%. So it's more people who were already using Buy Now, Pay Later are probably spending more. And I think that highlights some of the challenges for the sector, as the usage isn't really skyrocketing anymore.
Right. I want to talk about the challenges, but really quickly, is there any sense of what share of the overall purchases is being done through Buy Now, Pay Later?
Salesforce just released some figures from their holiday sales, which put it at about 4 to 6% of the online sales, e-commerce in the US. And most weeks in the holiday period, it was around 4%. And then as we got closer to the holidays and maybe people were spending more, it went up a little higher. And the US is still, the overall share is still below the rest of the world, the global average, which is closer to 8%.
Okay. And the main players in this space in the US are?
So there are half a dozen right now. There's Affirm, Afterpay, Klarna, Sezzle, Zip, and also PayPal, which introduced its pay in 4 installment plan back in the second half of 2020.
Mm-hmm. Okay. You talked about some challenges. Sky, in the recent 2022 Trends report, so separate to the standalone Buy Now, Pay Later report we have, in the Trends report for this year, we predicted that Buy Now, Pay Later's lending and disclosure practices will come under scrutiny from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau, CFPB. What's going on here?
Yeah, so we're still in the pretty early stages on the regulatory front in the US, particularly compared to markets where there's been more Buy Now, Pay Later adoption, like Australia and the UK. The authorities here have really just started to look into the sector a little more closely over the last 6 months. The Consumer Financial Protection Bureau issued a warning to consumers back in July, and the U.S. Congress House Financial Services Committee had a hearing in November. And then in December, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau launched an inquiry on the Buy Now, Pay Later firms, asking the big 5 of them, not including Sezzle, because that's a smaller one, to complete very detailed questionnaire about their products, their disclosures, the penalties, how they're using data. The questionnaire runs about 16 pages to really get a sense of how their businesses operate and what they do. So they'll have until March to complete those questionnaires. And then after that, I think it's going to take a little longer while the regulators assess the data, identify the risks to consumers, and then start coming up with regulations to address any gaps.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because so I'm looking at the numbers here. We've got 59 million Buy Now, Pay Later service users this year. That's what we're expecting. We're expecting about 77 million, so a further 16, 17 million to be added by 2025, going out into the future. What does that mean? It's about 21% of the population uses them today. About 27% of the population will use them in the future, in for about 3 or 4 years time. And when you look by generation, it seems like even though Gen Zs are the most highly penetrated demographic, their penetration kind of levels off after 2023, as does millennials, and Gen X will be kind of the growth engine for those last few years of the forecast, baby boomers a little bit. But it is still growing, but it is flattening out at the same time. So my question, Sky, is do we think that it's going to be regulation that chokes off some of this growth, or is there another reason we can point to as to why BNPL uptake will slow down?
I think part of it's going to be regulation that's going to kind of put a damper on how buy now, pay later is marketed and the kinds of disclosures that have to be made and the processes that consumers might have to jump through a few more hoops to get access to credit, this type of credit, which is very easy and frictionless right now. So there might be a bit more friction introduced into the process of getting buy now, pay later credit, which is going to slow some of the growth. I think that there are also obstacles in terms of a lot of the consumers who are interested in buy now, pay later. The Gen Z and millennial consumers are already trying it. As I mentioned before, it's a lot harder to get older consumers who have entrenched payment habits to see the appeal in this if you're already using credit cards. I mean, I tried out buy now, pay later over the holidays in the interests of research. And it becomes difficult to keep track of all these different payments and have all these different notifications when your payments are due every 2 weeks. So to me, it just wasn't that appealing because I am an entrenched credit card user and I do collect my points and use them for other stuff.
Yeah. So other people might be familiar with what you're talking about. You go online, you buy something, and when you get to the payment options, instead of using your credit card, you have the option to buy now, pay later, and a bunch of different providers will offer that. However, it's moving into stores, Sky. To what extent will buy now, pay later services move into stores?
So we've really seen over the last 6 months or so, a lot more partnerships between buy now, pay later service providers and big retailers to bring it into stores. For example, Walmart has replaced its layaway program with a partnership with a firm. Klarna has tie-ups with Macy's and major mall operators. Even my local mall is touting buy now, pay later with signage outside stores and so on. And we saw a lot of these campaigns around the holidays, which makes sense because so much of the holiday sales were taking place in stores, something like 80% according to our forecasts. And this also offers a route to consumers who do more of their shopping in stores, the older consumers that buy now, pay later firms are trying to target. We haven't really seen too many numbers on the performance so far. So there was certainly growth, but it was coming out of a very tiny base because it wasn't really a thing in 2020.
Okay. So these individual players, you were saying to me that they're planning to be more than just paying for type services. What's going on here?
So because there's so much competition right now, it's not only the 6 leading buy now, pay later players that are competing against each other. We're also seeing major credit card issuing banks and the credit card networks, MasterCard, Visa in particularly, all getting into the buy now, pay later space, all looking at ways to offer more payment flexibility and installments. So that's really forcing the buy now, pay later providers to kind of cut their fees that they charge to merchants. Earlier, we were seeing fees of, much, much higher than what credit card networks, what credit card providers get. That's like in the 2 to 3% range. The buy now, pay later firms were getting more in the range of like 6%, maybe even more. But that's come down substantially, I think, because of the competition. And so they're really looking to offer a lot more services to consumers or to their users beyond just paying for installments. Some of them are trying to become super apps where they will offer all sorts of shopping directly from their apps and payments and different features. They offer virtual cards so that you can use buy now, pay later with any merchant, even if they're not a partner to the buy now, pay later provider. Some of them, Klarna and Affirm, have now internet browser plugins. So you can add a plugin to Chrome and then use their buy now, pay later service on any website, basically.
When did everyone start trying to be everything? It's very stressful. Why can't we're just a podcast? That's all we're going to do. We're not going to be offering food delivery or behind the numbers cloud services or legal advice. We're just going to do the podcast, and we're going to try and do it as best we can. That's what we've got time for the lead story. It's time now for the halftime report. Sky, what's one takeaway that you think the listeners should have paid most attention to during the lead story?
I think 2022 is going to be a big year for buy now, pay later in terms of transformation of the industry. We're going to see regulation, consolidation, and more diversified offerings from the providers as they aim to stand out from the competition.
Terrific. Time now for In Other News, but first, a quick word from our sponsor, Mountain. Mountain is taking everything you love about paid search and social advertising and bringing it to the TV screen. Mountain Performance TV is the world's first and only connected TV software platform that makes television advertising as easy as launching campaigns on paid search and social. Their self-serve platform makes it easy to choose your own audience, set your budget and goal, and see immediate results. Visit mountain.com to learn more. All right, folks, we are back today in other news. What to make of this recent avalanche of returns and what retailers should consider before stepping into the metaverse. Story 1. Retailers expect close to $800 billion in merchandise sold last year to be returned by consumers, according to a recent report from the National Retail Federation, or NRF, and Apprice Retail. $800 billion would be around 17% of total US retail sales, writes Danielle Inman of the NRF. Ms. Inman notes that the 2021 total returns rate of 17% is up from 11% during 2020. But online returns in 2021 are in line with recent years at an average of 21%. The categories with the highest return rates were similar to 2022 metrics: auto parts 19%, apparel 12%, and home improvement and housewares 11.5%. Sky, when retailers think about returns, then in your opinion, they should be thinking blank.
How to get them back out there. There's a huge amount of waste in returns, with items being destroyed just because they're no longer fit for sale as new. And I think this is where re-commerce know-how can really help retailers not only stem the losses from the returns, but to present themselves as doing so more sustainably. So if they're not able to resell items as new, they should be thinking about how to develop channels for as-is or gently used sales.
Mm-hmm. The NRF, or Apprice Retail, also noted that for every $100 in returned merchandise accepted, retailers lose $10 to return fraud. That'd be 10%. Steve Preble, CEO of Apprice Retail, says now it's time to stop thinking of returns as a cost of doing business and begin to view them as a time to truly engage with your customers. Story 2. At NRF's recent big show, all eyes were on the metaverse, writes Insider Intelligence briefing director Jeremy Goldman. Cassandra Napoli, senior strategist at WGSN Insight, thinks getting familiar with the metaverse economy could become mandatory for brands that want to connect with Generation Alpha, those aged 12 and younger, which will be the first generation to not know a world prior to digital goods and may prefer them to physical ones. The CEO of Ralph Lauren, Patrice Louvet, sees the metaverse as an opportunity to build relationships with young people. The brand uses Roblox to let users clothe avatars in branded apparel. Nike also has a presence on Roblox, where over 47 million daily active users worldwide hang out in a place called Nikeland, or Nikeland. Other examples of retailers' entry into the meta world include some of Samsung's smart TVs now coming with an NFT platform app for discovering, buying, and trading in digital art. And Ralph Lauren also built a presence on the metaverse platform Zepeto, where it has sold over 100,000 units from its digital apparel collection, notes Jeremy Goldman, that is. Sky, the first thing retailers should consider before stepping into the metaverse, in your opinion, is blank.
Right now, it should be direct to avatar commerce. The metaverse, as imagined by Meta, formerly Facebook, that doesn't really exist yet, and it's not going to for quite a while because we don't have the technology to support it yet. But what retailers can think of is what we do have now, which is hugely popular youth gaming platforms like Roblox and Fortnite, where digital goods already present a real revenue opportunity for brands, as you noted. And this is where the audiences of the future are, the Gen Z and especially Gen Alpha, who, as you mentioned, will be the consumers of the future who have never not known a digital world.
Yep. And knowing less and living more and more in a world where ownership isn't as important. Emily Chu, Global Director of Wonderman Thompson Intelligence, talked about knownership, N-O-nership, knownership, valuing experiences over material goods and how it's become more popular among Gen Zs. She cites a survey by Apartment List. 35% of millennials think home ownership is important versus 26% of Gen Z people. Finally, Miss Napoli of WGSN Insights was theorizing how celebrities will be able to license their digital twins to participate in a virtual campaign so people can earn by doing literally zero work. That sounds amazing. Can I do one of those? Can I get a digital host to host the show so I can have an actual vacation? That's all we've got time for this episode. Thank you so much, Sky, for hanging out.
Thanks, Marcus.
Thank you, of course, to Victoria. She edits the show. Thanks to everyone listening. Tune in tomorrow for another episode of the Behind the Numbers Reimagining Retail, the New Marketer podcast made possible by Mountain.